Okay, we're back. We're back with more Live from the Heartland. This is Michael James, flying solo, your host this morning, while Katie and Tom are off doing family events in other parts of the country, in the region. And we just heard Daniel Biss, a candidate for governor of the state of Illinois. And now we have an old pal, Don Rose, who has been around for a long time. I first knew about Don back when you were working in the mobilization and around back in 1968 in the Democratic Convention. We've had you on the show many times. You've been really on target with all your predictions except for one election, which fooled us all. And I would like to just start off by, you were listening very attentively. I watched you through the window to Daniel Biss talking about his campaign. And what's your take on Daniel Biss?
Well, I think he's clearly the most experienced and most progressive candidate, and probably should be the next governor, but he certainly has an uphill battle, although that hill is getting a little lower.
A little bit.
Billionaire Pritzker is now attacking him, which is probably the best sign that Daniel Biss's campaign is moving. Now, whether it's going to move, he's still behind from every poll I've seen, but he has narrowed the gap. And the question is, in 20 days, roughly, voting really starts on the 5th of March. Absentee voting, where about a third of the people will, a quarter, a third of the people will vote. So he's got his work cut out for him. I think the other candidates are not to be dismissed. The name Kennedy is going to be very big in the black community. Kennedy has attracted other progressives like Chuy Garcia and Troy LaRiviere. So I think progressives are kind of divided here, and it's a matter of are they going to believe that Dan can win? He has moved up, and the idea of a middle-class governor is, to me,
that was good.
The winning slogan. I'm not predicting he's going to win, but I think he's probably he'll be doing an endorsement column in a couple of weeks in my Observer column, and I'm very likely to endorse him.
Well, that'll be
with his flaws.
Yeah. The other candidate, let's talk about Kennedy for a minute. There is a little bit of a kind of a messianic quality to some of his ads, but I'm not clear what he stands for. I mean, you like to think, if you fall into your liberal shoes, Kennedy kind of a good guy and all that, but he was around in Illinois for a long time, and the only thing I remember him ever doing was to block Bill Ayers from getting a kind of a, professorial accolades or some title. What's your take on Kennedy?
I think Kennedy's a reasonably progressive guy. He's been engaged in a lot of charities, as has JB, but he's riding on his name because he does not have genuine progressive legislative accomplishments. You've never seen him associated with anything. I mean, he's been associated with good causes, but not highly progressive causes. But let us not forget that name Kennedy is going to be very powerful.
No, I think the ads are interesting. One of the things that I did see him talk about, which I would like to just address with you, I think it was on WTTW. He said that Rauner was not a Republican. He called him a libertarian, and I wonder what your take is on that, and what is your kind of take on libertarians in general? I just refer to them as kind of right-wing anarchists.
Well, some are and some aren't. If you are theoretically a Republican and you believe in publicly funded abortions as to his possible detriment in the primary, Rauner could be considered a libertarian. That's a very broad thing. The original libertarians came out of the University of Chicago, Milton Friedman was fundamentally a libertarian. So a lot of people can claim the mantle. If you are a conservative who has certain civil liberties values, you can call yourself a libertarian. I'm not going to hassle the guy for using that term, particularly since Republican does not have the finest aroma to it.
It certainly doesn't. Don Rose, let's switch gears a little bit, and on a local race, what's your take on the assessor's race, where
very important. This is probably,
yeah, it's a good race.
This is probably the race that will affect most people in Cook County most directly. And I'm very happy to say that I've seen some polls that Fritz Cagey is running well ahead of Joe Barrios, who is part of the Chicago scumbag end of the Democratic Party.
You heard that, scumbag.
Scumbag end of the Democratic Party. He's running, Cagey is running very well ahead. There is a female plant in that race who will take some votes away because A, there is going to be a woman's vote. She just got back on the ballot, and she is a plant from the Barrios people. And I think people who may be tempted to vote for a woman, feminists who want to vote for a woman, don't realize that they are taking votes away from the potential winner, and they could be hurting themselves by helping Barrios by taking votes away from Cagey.
Do you actually think that Andrea Reales entering the race, because I remember she was on our show talking about how Black, Latino, poorer people get reamed on their property taxes, and before she announced for the race. And I'm just wondering, she did try to run once before. You think it's like accidental, or is it really like a conscious thing that, or is she being used now?
I think she is being used, and I think it's a very conscious use.
Okay, well that's a rough one for everyone, because she's certainly been out there supporting some causes.
In the three-way race, Cagey is still running ahead, but
Yeah.
it's much closer.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that we know we have to get rid of Barrios, so people have to address that and deal with it. Don Rose, let me.
Can I plug one judge?
You can.
People in the 18th Sub-Circuit, I have a good friend running who is already an appointed judge. His name is Myron Makoff. His number is 162. He's endorsed by everybody important, from Jan Schakowsky to Newton Minow to the National Organization of Women. And the reason I want to bring him in is he's the Democratic endorsed candidate, but a couple of machine hacks are endorsing, breaking away and endorsing his opposition, whose name I'm not even going to give you. But so I do want to say a good word for Mike Makoff, but let's go on.
What's your take on the water reclamation race? Cam Davis is, someone died in that office.
Yes.
So there's a fellow named Cam Davis who people, I think that I got the name right, who a lot of people say is really a hell of an environmentalist, a good guy.
Yes.
But you have to know to write him in. So I'm calling everyone's attention to that. Let me ask you, Don, what you think about David Orr deciding not to run again for county clerk. How that came down, because it doesn't seem to me that there was a person in place, a progressive person in place, to run for David's seat. Any thoughts on that?
Well, the original plan was that Chuy Garcia was going to be the replacement. As a matter of fact, there was some talk that David might resign a little early and get him put on. Chuy was then, that sort of laid low for a while. And Chuy is now the heavy favorite to replace Louis Gutierrez in the 4th District, and you can't say enough good things about Chuy. The replacement for David, we've got to find the right, we've got a lot of good people. We've got to find the person who has the same kind of qualities that David had, who does not look like a wild-eyed progressive, but who is a very solid guy people believe in.
And that race is not until 2019, right?
Right.
Speaking of Chewy, you brought Chewy up because Chewy was it was rumored to be in line to get that seat or to make a move on it. Then there was some talk that Chewy might run for mayor again, and now Chewy is running for Congress. What is your take on the mayoral race that's going to come up in 2019 here in the city of Chicago?
Well, there's a lot of interesting candidates, at least at the moment. We have the former police commissioner, Gary McCarthy.
Who really just seems like he's going after Ron.
Right. We have Paul Vallis, who almost screwed up our school system in the guise of economic straightening out, but he introduced the worst testing and private school, charter school sessions. He was really terrible for education, but he's got a good reputation. And then Bridget Gaynor, a relatively unknown county commissioner, has been wanting to run. And then you've got the only declared candidate, Troy LaRiviere. Now, the fact of all of those people with Rahm Emanuel, each of those people takes votes away from Rahm Emanuel, and if Troy LaRiviere stays the only black candidate and consolidates it, we may have another Harold Washington coalition, because many, many white progressives who, of the Biss kind and of the old Harold Washington kind, can also get behind LaRiviere. The problem there is if another major black candidate comes in, it's all up for grabs. But right now, with the constellation we've got, I would say that Rahm could even come in third. And I'm not predicting it, but this is not going to happen until 2019. So it's very, very interesting, and the table is not set yet. But I think Troy LaRiviere, it's up to him to build the kind of base that Harold had, and I think it's possible.
One of the issues in the election will be the mayor's election will be police procedures, and we have the Laquan McDonald issue, that video, and that seems to be what McCarthy is trying to blame Rahm for that. But there are efforts to provide better oversight of Chicago police. You have any opinion on those procedures and the overview or the oversight of Chicago's police? And I guess I want to say, have they evolved? Where are the police at? What are the issues? Your take on police and governance?
I think the best thing that's happened, and then a bad thing happened, they replaced the old IPRA, so-called independent police review authority, with something called COPRA, in the absence of federal assistance. And a wonderful woman was the head of it, Sharon Fairley, and the first big decision they made was very progressive. Now, Sharon Fairley, unfortunately, quit to run for Attorney General, and depending on who replaces her, COPRA has, according to some of my friends who are on the community board for that, are hopeful. And I would say the best hope for police community relations improvement lies with COPRA until we have a new mayor who is dedicated to it and will have a police department that changes that contract and becomes more progressive.
We've had a number of the Attorney General candidates on our show. I wondered if you have had any sense about how that race might go. There's a number of, some progressive people, and Aaron Goldstein, Sharon Fairley's running. What's your take on that race?
Scott Druth is very good. He's the only state representative who voted against Madigan for Speaker of the House. Unfortunately, I think the race is boiling down to Pat Quinn, the former governor, because he's best known, and the endorsed Democratic candidate, Kwame Raoul. There is, however, fairly in that race who will split the black vote. So if I had to make a bet, not that he's my favorite, but if I had to make a bet, I'd say that Pat Quinn is still strongly in the lead.
All right, Don, we will run out of time. I got one more question. I wonder if you would give us your overview, your analysis, your vision, your picture. What do you got on the Democratic Party, whether it be locally, statewide, nationally? Where are we at?
We are possible. What I am hoping for is that the various factions of the Democratic Party, although they battle each other in primaries and so on, realize the importance of stopping fascism in America and get together.
You've heard it.
Get together fully, even though both sides will have to make compromises. You've got something like Nancy Pelosi, maybe an old face, but she's a brilliant organizer. There are people like Sherrod Brown who are elected in red states.
Senator of Ohio.
Senator of
Sherrod
Ohio,
Brown.
elected, about to be reelected for the third time in Ohio. I think we've got to gather around somebody who represents Middle America, and that means not an East Coast and not a West Coast candidate.
Don, I'd like to talk to you for a lot more time than we have.
I'd like to talk more myself.
So we'll have you back and maybe we'll get together and hang out sometime. Thank you so much. That was Don Rose, and he has a column in the Observer newspaper, which I'm sure you can find online. And,
also on Facebook on Monday
and on
mornings.
Facebook. Anything that we missed you want to just give us a hint at, or give us your Facebook, your websites, all that kind of stuff?
The website is Chicago Daily Observer, cdobs.com. That column appears late Monday or early Tuesday, but it's also posted on Facebook under my name as a general post on Monday mornings by 10.
Thank you so much for coming on live from the Heartland. We're going to have a little music. I'm not sure what we're going to play, but we're going to hear it now, and we'll be right back with a filmmaker, Will Adams, and he's brought along Stephanie McNair, who does some singing in one of his films. So we'll be right back with more live from the Heartland.